Alrighty team, it is time to set up for the month of July, and for July I'm going with a chess theme. Not gonna lie, I'm not feeling super motivated right now to be creative. In fact, I would say that I am in a huge motivational and creative slump, so that's cool. But one of the ways we can get around that and still have something decorative in our journal is using printables. In this case, I found some pictures online of chess pieces that had a kind of geometric pattern over the top, which I thought looked pretty cool. So I sized them to fit my notebook, and I'm going to be using those as the majority of my decoration. Along with that, I'm also using some black and white grid washi tape, because if we're going with a chess theme, it makes sense to have some chess board aesthetic. But it's time to get into our setup. Now, initially I was intending for this video to be a little bit more real time with some kind of, talking in the moment kind of pieces. So if any of my hand gestures look a little bit odd, it's because I was talking at the time, but it turns out that my microphone sensitivity was up way too high and my sound was just completely blown out. So I didn't really want to submit your ears to that, so we're going with a voiceover instead. It kind of just added insult to injury, given the whole not feeling it in terms of the creativity aspect. And then it's like, hey, you thought you could film a plan with me. You thought you knew how to do this. Haha, think again. I'm gonna mess around with your microphone sensitivity. But I digress. While I could certainly have drawn in our chess pieces for this cover page, I thought it was just going to be way easier to print them off. I mean, I liked the design as I saw it online, so might as well just have the exact thing in my notebook. The design of this cover page was suggested by my friend Rachel, so we have the king lying down and the queen remaining victorious, standing up in the center. Very much the king is dead, but the queen is alive. Because the chess pieces had some smaller details that I had to cut out around, I wanted to make sure I had really good coverage of my double-sided tape on the back of those. So I just used my double-sided tape roller and went over the entire back section of it, and actually outside of that as well, so completely over the edges. This just meant that all of those little pieces would actually have some kind of adhesive on them, so I could get the cutouts to stick really well to my pages. When it came to layering the queen on top of the king, I wanted to make sure that I couldn't see any of the king's line work through the queen. Because I've printed this on just regular cartridge paper, it is a little bit on the thinner side, so it is a little bit more see-through, you get a bit of kind of ghosting. So to minimize that as much as possible, I went over the line work on the king that would have sat underneath the queen, just with a white gel pen. It probably would have been better to use something like a white paint pen or maybe a correction tape, but the white gel pen was opaque enough that it did lessen the effect of those black lines through the queen. As said, I had some technical issues when it came to the sound in this video, but I also had some issues when it came to autofocus, because my head is just not in the game today. I still wanted to show you how this setup turned out though, and eventually I do realize that the autofocus is on, but apologies for any in-focus, out-of-focus shots we have here. Just in the same way that I like to show you the mistakes that I make in my journal, I also like to show you the mistakes that I make in my content creation. In my planning of this setup, I was going to use kind of a geometric font to go with the geometric chess pieces, so thickening the downstrokes on some regular capital letters, and then putting the geometric pattern into those thickened downstrokes, but I decided that I didn't really want to have to color in the geometric pieces like I had done in my plan. I did try it out on this separate piece of paper with another queen, but I thought that doing all that coloring in was going to be a little bit too fiddly, and given the fact that I'm not feeling super motivated to do any decoration, that might just be a little bit too much. I think that it's really important that when it comes to setting up our bullet journals, we do pay attention to how kind of creative or how motivated we're feeling, because if you try and put all this pressure on yourself to make something, super decorative, super creative and whatever, and you're not feeling it, you are going to suck the fun out of your journal. And I don't want that for me. I enjoy my journal, so if I make it feel like a chore by making myself do all of this decoration that I'm just not in the mood for, it's going to put me into a negative space when it comes to actually using my journal, and that's not going to pay off in the long run. Working on my projects list though, I've been finding that the top half of my projects list from June, which I'm keeping the same for July here, that's been working really well for me, just having each of the different perks that I offer my team members and then breaking it down into the various steps to actually put that perk out. I have added a couple of new steps for this month coming, so having a scheduling step and an idea generation step. I didn't have those in June, but it's been a really good way to indicate the progress that I'm making on each of those. For June, the lower section was for my YouTube schedule, but that one hasn't been working so well because we've been doing the Bullet Journal Basics series this month, and that one is going to continue into July July and probably also August. I say probably, it's totally going to continue into August. So rather than having that as a YouTube section for July, I'm probably going to make a separate spread dedicated to my YouTube videos. And so this bottom section is just going to hold other projects that I might be working on. As we typically like to do, we are going to have a look at how the current month is going. So as mentioned, for June, we have the projects list where the top section is pretty much the same as what I'm using for July. We do have some transfer of the gel pen, and this is why gel pens are my nemesis. But the YouTube section down the bottom here doesn't actually have any videos from the Bujo Basics series or Bullet Journal Basics series. It's just got the other videos that I wanted to put out in June. So the July setup we are notably working on at the moment. The cover page I thought was pretty cute. I do wish I had put this June header just a little bit higher. I find that typically when I do a cover page, I like that central element to actually be a little higher than central because it just looks a little bit better, I feel, but anywho. So projects, cover page, all good. For my monthly log, you can see I did a Dutch door, so cut away the top part of the page and then had this little door in the middle. And while I don't dislike the layout, I know I don't like vertical logs when it comes to my monthly log. I can do a vertical log for a gratitude log, I can do a vertical when it comes to a habit tracker, but when it comes to a monthly log, I like a calendar layout. So this is something we are changing in July. I've been pretty good at keeping up with it though, so you can see I've sectioned it off into different sections: events and appointments, YouTube content, my JashiiCorrin community posting, and then other posting. Not very much my preference, but it's been okay. After this, we had the actions list, which I sadly did not populate before June actually started. So you can see we have a fair bit of space down the bottom here, which I haven't used. But on this one, we have the one-off or monthly actions on the left, and then we've got the weekly actions on the right. We're probably going to keep that fairly similar for the month coming. I'm just going to make sure that I actually populate it before the month starts. After this one though, we have my self-care trackers. So all of my daily self-care tasks over here, which I have not been doing super well with. As said, I'm really in a slump right now, both in terms of motivation and energy and creativity, and that has very much affected my self-care. It's all kind of like a cumulative causation thing. I don't take care of myself, so I don't feel motivated, so then I don't feel creative, yada yada yada. We've also got my weekly habits though, and my monthly habits. I'm going to condense this down to just one page for July because I think that with my motivation being as it is right now, tracking this many things is just kind of piling on. It's like more demotivating because I'm not doing these things. So we're going to be tracking less daily stuff, probably the same amount of weekly stuff, and maybe similar or a few less in terms of the monthly habits. Like there are only 2 here. I have more space, but yeah, anywho. We've got my meal log and meal plan. So we've got the plan here and then the log, and you can see that one hasn't been going super well either because low motivation, so more takeout, all of that. The packing list I do need to finish filling in because I am leaving soon, so I would like to have that one actually populated and ready to use for doing my packing. And then after this we have the monthly reflection, which I do like the style of, and I'm going to keep the same style for July. This is like my go-to in terms of the sections on here, so we're just going to keep it the same. After that though, we're into the daily logs, and daily logs have very much been my kind of jam this year. Previously I was more of a weekly log person, but I've been finding the daily logs just to be really satisfying, even if, you know, I'm not necessarily doing all of these things on the day they're actually recorded, but as long as they're written down, that's kind of all I need. But you can see we've got daily logs up until today, and then I've got a couple more pages in here blank so that I could actually put some more daily logs in. I know I'm going away for a week, so I don't need quite as much space, but after that I've also put in some spaces to do a mid-year check-in. So we've got mid-year check-in here, probably like a goals check-in as well. We're not going to do that in this video, but then after that I also wanted to leave some more pages for my mid-year goal planning, or like Q3 goal planning. Couple more pages for that. I didn't really know quite how many I needed, but I kind of just used my previous quarter goal planning as kind of a guesstimate. And then we have my projects list and my cover page for July. After this one though, we can flip on over and get into setting up for the monthly log. And as I said before, I really didn't want to use another vertical style for the month coming because that style just really doesn't work so well for me. I can use it for other layouts, but the monthly log, not so much. Which brought me to the challenge of how do I set up a calendar in a traveler's notebook? Originally, I was considering using a tip-in, which would flip out to either the left-hand side or the right-hand side of the notebook to make one of the pages a little bit wider. But to have that kind of tip-in that hangs off the side of the notebook, then you have a little bit more difficulty when it comes to writing things on it. This is why I typically use those kind of tip-ins for reference materials, where you write the stuff on the tip-in and then stick it in, rather than sticking it into the notebook and then writing things on it. I also know that I am very resistant to having to rotate my notebook when I need to use a layout, so I didn't want to have to turn my notebook to use my monthly log either. For that reason, I decided to do a rotated calendar layout. So rather than each day of the week being a column, in this one we have each day of the week being a row. So the top row being Monday, the next row being Tuesday, Wednesday, so on and so forth. I have previously used a style similar to this in August of 2017, but the main reason for that one was because I wanted to have the calendar on just one page of the layout rather than the full spread, and again didn't want to have to rotate my notebook to use it properly. In terms of the decoration on our monthly log though, we are again going in with our chess pieces, so just having printed them off, cut them out, and then stuck them in with double-sided tape, and then to fill in a little bit more of the extra space, again just using that black and white washi tape. Originally I was going to have it coming out of the calendar boxes, but then it looked like there was a little too much, so I decided to switch it up and make these come out of the chess pieces instead. Coming out of the rook on the left wasn't too bad because it's just a flat bottomed piece, so cutting that wasn't too difficult. But coming out of the knight on the right was a little bit more challenging because it's not flat on top. Tragedy also struck because the paper that I had printed the chess pieces on didn't really play well with the washi tape, so the washi tape did end up pulling up a little bit of the paper, and I just had to go in with a Stettler Tri Plus fine liner in a dark grey colour to fill in some of the line work that sadly got removed when the tape stuck where it wasn't supposed to. I do think that this style of monthly log is going to work way better than the one that I've used in June. I just like the visual aspect of the calendar, and it's kind of nice to have a very set, defined box or space that all of my events for a particular day can go in. And I don't like writing them next to each other like I would have to in a vertical. I like to write them one on top of another. With the monthly log done though, it is time to flip on over to where my actions list is going to be. As mentioned, I am keeping the structure of this one fairly similar to what I've had in June, so just having my one-off or monthly tasks on the left-hand page, and then having my weekly actions on the right. I am a sucker for highlighting every second line, so we're going to be doing that on both of these pages, and I also wanted to bring in a little more of that decoration with the chess pieces and the washi tape. When it comes to my monthly setups, I'm all about using repeated elements to tie all of the pages together, so things like the consistent color palette, consistent lettering styles, consistent decoration. That also meant those grey bars at the top, I'm using those on every page, just because it makes all of the pages of my setup look cohesive. I find that I'm much more likely to actually use my journal and use all of the setups if I like the way they look, and I like the way they look more if they look like they all belong together. As said though, on this layout I have my monthly or one-off actions on the left-hand page and my weekly actions on the right. For those weekly actions, you can see that I've highlighted every second column of the 5 right columns. Those ones get capped off with a week number for each of the weeks in the month. I only did 1 to 5 because I thought that, the 6th week of July is just the Monday. And yes, I know that the first week is just the Saturday and Sunday, but those are just the spaces that I can use to tick off those weekly actions as I complete them each week. We're not populating the actions list here, so flipping on over and we're onto a spread for my self-care tracker, which is going to go on the left, and my meal log, which is going to go on the right. Initially, when planning the setup, I was going to do the meal log across 2 pages. I have been finding that in June it feels a little bit squashed, but because I condensed my self-care tracker, I thought that it would go nicely next to that one. So I'm just going to deal with it being a little bit squashed for another month. The meal log doubles as a meal plan as well, so in the left-hand column of that one, I write out the planned meal for dinner for each day of the month, and then next to this I can check off whether we had it as planned or if I had something different, and in that case I will log whatever meal we actually ate. The little icons on the very right-hand side are to indicate whether that meal had vegetables, whether it had some kind of protein, and whether it was or was not takeout. So essentially adding a little tick in that column if the meal isn't takeout, because I see not having takeout as a more positive thing than having takeout, especially given the number of times I have had takeout this month, but we are not talking about that. For my self-care tracker though, as said, I was condensing this one because tracking so many self-care tasks, especially when I'm not really prioritizing my self-care just becomes really demotivating. It's not super fun to look at your self-care tracker and have all of these black circles saying, hey, didn't do that, hey, didn't do that, hey, didn't do that. So to avoid that this month, I've decided for my daily self-care tasks in particular, I'm only going to be tracking 2. So I'm going to be picking 2 of focus and tracking them in some mini calendars that I'm putting at the top. Rather than drawing out the mini calendars myself, I am just using a printable. This one is one of the printable styles that my team members get each month. So I just cut 2 of those out and stuck them in again with double-sided tape. Underneath this, we're going to have a section for my weekly self-care tasks or weekly habits that I'm trying to build. And at the very bottom, we have that space for the monthly habits or monthly self-care tasks. I still need to plan out what those self-care tasks are going to be, so I'm not writing them in here, but time to flip over and onto my monthly reflections page. These sections I do know because they're the same every month, so we will be writing in each of the headers for all of the different spaces that I like to include. Doing these monthly reflection pages has been such a satisfying thing to have in my bullet journal. It's just really nice to peruse back through them and look at my wins and my memories. Not so much a fun thing to look at my challenges, but it does give me an opportunity to consider those challenges and what I might do differently so they don't crop up again. Or if they do crop up, how I might react differently. Wins, challenges, memories, and improvements make up the left-hand side, but on the right, this is where I like to do my financial review, so considering how much I've spent for the month, how many yes spend and no spend days I've had, in accordance with my no spend challenge rules. We also have a section for a planner review, so things that I have been enjoying or haven't been enjoying in my bullet journal. Under this, there's a space to list out what goals I've been working on, and I like to have that section even though filling it in each month is usually pretty similar. Most of the goals I'm working on are the kind that I work on month after month, rather than just working on for 1 month, but it's also a nice way to remind myself of what my goals actually are. But underneath this, the last 2 sections that I have on that right-hand page are dedicated to a looking forward to section and a nervous about section, for things that are coming up in the month ahead. So in this case, coming up in August. As said, I set up and use each of these sections for each month. So when it comes to doing my mid-year review or mid-year goal check-in, I want to think about some other things that I might be able to ask myself to gain some more insight or perspective on how my goal setting has been going. If you have any recommendations of questions that you like to ask yourself when you're doing your reflections, especially bigger reflection periods like the end of a quarter or mid-year or the end of the year, I would love to hear about them. But with the reflections page done, it's time for a flip through of what we've set up today. So we have the projects list with my team member perks and then other projects. My cover page with the Queen is alive but the King is sadly deceased. We have the monthly log with that kind of rotated view, so with each row being a day and each column being a week. And again, we've got our little chess pieces here. After that one, we've got the actions list with my one-off or monthly tasks and my weekly tasks. And I will fill this in before the month starts. On the next page, we have my self-care habits. So the 2 daily habits that I'm going to be focusing on, my weekly habits and my monthly habits. And because this is condensed, it can go next to the meal plan and log for plan, logged, and then those extra details. And then our final page here is for my monthly review with all of those sections that I typically like to include. If you are looking for more July bullet journal inspiration, then the playlist at the top is the one to check out. Or if you are keen to check out more monthly setups in general, then the one at the bottom is for you. Click or tap on either of those and I'll see you over there.